Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Because I'm the goddamn President of the United States.
This is a movie podcast. We are working through disaster movie season. In fact, we are finishing disaster movie season today with our final film of the season, and that is Geostorm, which our patrons voted for. It was up against a couple other things. I think maybe San Andreas and something else.
Let me check. We had San Andreas and Into the Storm.
Right, okay. And this beat both of those. This is the film from 2017 starring Gerard Butler, as well as some other faces which we'll get into, but he's the headliner here. And it's kind of a... So it kind of starts off with a prologue that says in 2019 this stuff happens, although it's a few years later when the rest of the movie takes place. So
yes,
they wanted to set it right around the corner, which means we're already past the years, even though it's not been that long. The movie's saying it's the future. But the idea is that climate change started to go wild, but they predicted the day after tomorrow. So the day before tomorrow, they built an insane satellite system that would attack the weather with science and fix the weather. And the premise of this movie is that something starts to go wrong with this network of satellites, and it starts to cause problems rather than fix them. And it's all about kind of trying to stop bigger problems from happening and figure out why problems are happening. So that was the most ineloquent way I could have said any of this. I'm operating on very little sleep, and this movie's dumb as hell.
Same.
So
same. This is not going to be a good review, Pete.
This is all right.
We're just
get it out of the way right now. Yep. Okay, we're in for a shit show. But yes, this is Geostorm, everyone. I assume you hadn't seen this before, David?
No. I remember... I think they were separated by a few years, but I remember kind of just conflating this and Moonfall in my head as just kind of the clear indicators of, oh, we're done with disaster movies. Like we're just past that point now, aren't we?
I don't know how well this or Moonfall did. I think they did okay. We're kind of in a weird place though, where like they're getting so ridiculous in terms of the premise, because like the entire concept of a disaster movie typically is, hey, what if this thing happened in the worst possible conditions it could happen in? But you know, at least to begin with, is okay, a boat capsizing, a fire in a tall building, and then even getting to something as silly as, you know, a volcano near a populated area. It's like, it's still a volcano, it's still based on something that exists, even if it's not likely to happen next to a very, you know, highly densely populated town. But once we get to this, and it's like, we built a science fiction network of satellites that can literally change the weather at our command, and that's not even, look, the plot's not about building this thing. If that was the end point, that would be one thing. If that was like the crazy solution to the problem, no, that's like the backstory to the problem. The problem then comes how that's then corrupted, or how it's breaking down.
Yes.
And then, so we're actually starting off at a place where we're already so far out of the realistic world that it doesn't, like, honestly, at a certain point it stops feeling like a disaster movie and just starts feeling like nonsense sci-fi. But hey,
I was gonna, this out of all the movies we've done this season, this is the one that feels the most out of place in terms of disaster movie. It feels the most like it's trying so hard to be all these other things, but it's just using the disaster backdrop to tell its story, in big quotes there.
And it's not to say that the science in this is necessarily worse than, frankly, most of the other movies we've done this season, because honestly, it's probably on par. But it's just starting off from a place of just such, you know, because at least, like, okay, an asteroid, a comet coming towards Earth, okay, there is a slim chance of that happening. It's a thing that is at least based on some thread, some little figment of reality has been used as the jumping off point, as ridiculous as the rest of it might be. This is just like, no, we're already past that into La La Land, and then we're just going to go from there. So that's what Geostorm is. I actually had seen this before, believe it or not, and
I believe it.
I did not remember almost anything about this movie. I remembered that there's a lot of Gerard Butler up in the space station, and that is about it. I could not have told you anything else about this movie. I could not have told you anyone else who was in this movie. even though there's a couple of notable faces in kind of supporting roles.
Yeah,
but yeah. So
I was surprised by how many people I actually recognized in this.
Yeah, it did not leave an impression. I'll say that. So, with all that said, we'll get into it. David, what did you think of Geostorm?
I don't think, to be clear, that sigh is not me considering whether or not it's good. It's bad. It's not a good movie. Like, I'm upfront about that. The sigh is that I said that it feels the least disaster movie-ish. And the reason that I say that is that I think buried underneath this movie is an actually somewhat decent, like, whodunit sort of like thriller, like trying to solve the case before it's too late sort of thing. And I admire that. I think that they could have done well with that and like set the pieces up. The problem that this movie comes in at is that it's so focused on its set pieces and rule of cool. And the thing that makes a whodunit work is that the audience is able to like piece this together at the same time. We're able to like follow this mystery as it unfolds. There are so many things in this movie that just come out of like not even left field. They come out of the dugout. They come out of a completely separate baseball stadium altogether. Like it's maddening how much stuff is just all of a sudden like, oh, I guess that's a thing. Okay, sure.
Yeah, David, I see what you're saying, but I'm going to offer another critique here that kind of makes everything you just said somewhat irrelevant.
Fair.
It's painfully obvious who done it. The second they start talking in the first scene they're in the entire movie. We can't spoil anything. We're starting spoiler free, of course, as we always do. I didn't do this little rant. But start spoiler free. We'll give you a warning before we get to spoilers. And of course, if you enjoy the show, please do hit the like button on YouTube. Helps out a bunch. And of course, you can go over to Patreon and support us. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. Yeah, I forgot to do it this time. Look, I told you I was tired. It's obvious. It's painfully obvious who it is, right? The entire time, regardless of whatever red herrings they throw at us, it's painfully obvious who the villain is. And yes, this movie has a villain because it's that type of movie. Right?
It's not God. It's not the space station. It's a guy.
Right. So there's that going on. Yes, like obviously there's lots of disaster movie scenes in this because we get lots of different locations, lots of different things happening to those locations. It feels like it's going through a list of things we've already seen in a lot of the other films we've done this season, or at least if not this season, then previous seasons of disaster movies, and speed running them in these short little like short films that are sprinkled throughout. Number one problem though, right? Maybe aside from the whole just the premise being so like weird and gigantic up front, because I already mentioned that, is frankly I think both leads of this movie are kind of bad. I don't think Gerard Butler is a particularly good actor, and I think the other main character we have in this that is, and it is like almost an equal lead role, is his brother in this, because he's got his own kind of plot on Earth the entire time. I think he's pretty bad in this as an actor.
I like Jim Sturgess. I haven't seen him in a lot of things. The one thing that he's most known for is 21, and I like that movie. I think he does a good job in that. I think you're right, he doesn't do a good job in this, but by contrast of Gerard Butler, I think he's acting circles around him. I think Gerard Butler like barely wanted to be in this movie, and he is cashing in every last dime he can here.
I mean, yeah, if I'm comparing the two, yeah, maybe he's better, but neither one came off as convincing to me. Like, I don't know if it's just, maybe it's just bad direction, bad script, and all the other reasons why a performance might be bad. But Jim Sturgess, the entire time, I was not feeling, he felt like, I don't know, like a teenager put on his dad's suit and pretending to go to work that day, and he's like trying to pretend that he's got this important role in government, and I'm like, you're like 21. I mean, he's not really, but he feels like he's 21 or something like that.
Yeah, he's got that face. He's got a younger looking face. And that is, something you got to think about when you're casting these people, of how old do we think they are? Because the moment he said, it's in the introductory scenes, the moment that he said like, hey, you're my favorite brother, I'm like, oh, this isn't a father-son. I thought for sure this was a father-son thing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, every time he tries to speak with some authority or some emotion, it just comes out really try hard. It's like you're trying to act. Like, I can see your face straining to show emotion, but it just looks like someone really trying to act. And I had that problem the entire time. I think he's really bad in this. Okay. Gerard Butler's very bad as well. And what gets me on Gerard Butler in this film, right? So those of you who don't know, if it wasn't obvious to some of you, he's Scottish, right? And
what? No.
right. So the funny thing is, this movie starts, and his first couple of scenes happen, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh god, he's trying to do an American accent, and it's awful. Like, his Scottish is slipping through constantly. It's really, like, as someone who's used to hearing American accents, because I watch a lot of movies and TV, and as someone who actually speaks in a Scottish accent, this was like, I was getting like the worst of both sides of this, where I was like really noticing both the fake attempt at the American accent, but also the real accent coming through. It was both painfully obvious to me. And I'm like, fine, they've made him American because his brother's American, blah, 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 blah. But then there's a line about a third into the movie where someone says, oh, the government have sent a stooge, an American stooge has come up to the space station. And he's like, actually, me and my brother were born in the UK. And I nearly, I let out like a noise at that point where I'm like, okay, first of all, right, maybe technically they're not actually saying he's Scottish here, they're still pretending he's just English or whatever, but I have never heard someone from Scotland say like the UK instead of just saying they're Scottish. That sounded weird up front.
This is a post-international effort sort of. He views himself as a world citizen.
I don't care how at peace the rest of the world is. Scotland's still going to make fun of England. It's going to happen, all right? Right.
I do want to jump in real quick. Jim Sturgess is actually British.
Oh, fair enough. I didn't know that, but well, he's definitely not playing in like a British accent in this, right? No. Let's be clear. He is speaking completely in an American accent, a convincing American accent, especially compared to Butler. But the other point I had here is like, wait, you're actually admitting he's from the UK. Why in the hell isn't he just using his normal accent instead? And part of me honestly thinks that they filmed several scenes before this one, and they saw how bad his accent was, and they said, we're going to put in one line of dialogue that justifies why he has a weird mix of two accents, just to cover it up. And this is it. That's why it's there.
I could see it. Yeah, that's definitely a full possibility. It's weird because like I've seen Gerard Butler in other movies, and I feel like there are some movies where he does better. Like there's some movies where maybe not fully convincing as an American accent, but he at least is better off. This one though, it stands out. It's very clear. Like, and that's why I'm saying I don't think Gerard Butler wants to be here. I don't think that he cares about this movie at all, because it just feels so poor of a performance for him every step of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I've never necessarily been that impressed with his work, but I feel like when I saw, I mean, it's been a long time, but I feel like when I saw him in, say, what was that movie, Olympus Has Fallen, the White House one, I feel like when I watched that, it wasn't as egregiously bad as an accent, because he's meant to be like the head of the Secret Service in that, so he's clearly meant to be American. So very, very, very strange. I don't know what's going on there. Looking elsewhere at the rest of the cast, since I've shat on those two enough.
Yes.
Abbie Cornish is in here, who's one of those actresses that popped. I mean, we saw her on the Ace over in the RoboCop remake. That was where we last saw her, but she's popped up in some TV shows here or there. She was in Sucker Punch, apparently. Poor her. But, you know, she's perfectly fine. I have no problems with Abbie Cornish. Her character's whatever, but, like, she's, you know, she's fine.
Yeah. She performs the role as it is written. I don't think she delivers anything over the top with it.
We have Ed Harris in here, who of course is a good actor.
Yes.
And the fact that he can do simple, boring dialogue and it just sounds so convincing, like right after you've heard Gerard Butler speak, is just kind of like pointing out the lack of like natural ability one of them has. Andy Garcia plays the president.
I still have Expendables 4 in my head. I still like I can't get that out of my head first.
Was that what I was? Maybe it was what I was thinking of. There's a movie. I was definitely thinking of a movie during this with Andy Garcia, and I don't know if it was Expendables 4 or something else, but it was. I can't even really say it now because I was kind of comparing it because of a spoiler, but there was something popping out in my head. Yeah. So we got that. Zazie Beetz is in here in a very small role. Like she's sprinkled throughout the movie, but it's a nothing role. She's just the hacker girl that is there occasionally.
I have nothing to back this up, but her role specifically feels like it was cut to hell in the editing process because they set her up and she's necessary for like a singular plot point, and then she's gone from the rest of the movie.
Yeah, she's just she's there celebrating at one point, and but that's like it. Like, yeah, she has nothing else to do, pretty much. And then there's a bunch of actors who I don't really know very well who fill out the space station and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the
other
big
one.
roles.
The female opposite of Gerard Butler. Her name is Alexandra Maria Lara.
Yes.
I didn't really recognize her for anything, but I thought, not counting Ed Harris because he's just a fully competent actor within his own right. I felt like out of everybody else, she was the one that I was like, okay, she's doing a good job. Like I could see her being in other things.
The problem with her role though is that it's so kind of like one note, and it's not her fault. It's just what the character is. It's hard to even get our sense of her range, to be honest, based on that. So. Yeah, honestly, not the greatest ensemble set of characters, right? I'm not even shitting on the actors here, although there's a couple that I did shit on and I will continue to shit on. But generally speaking, the range of characters is not that good. They're not that they don't have that much depth. They're pretty lame. So yeah, it's rough goings on that front. I mean, what I will say, to give remotely a positive to this, is that while it is all CG. And there were times where I feel like I'm just looking at a very, very expensive video game. It is fairly high quality CG. It feels very detailed. Most of the big set pieces that it does with the CG, for what it's worth.
I get what you're saying, and I agree. It is, when the CG is there, it is high quality. But it's weird because unlike the other movies that we've done, I feel like they don't treat these moments as set pieces. They don't treat it as you should be giving your focus to what's happening here. They treat it as the consequence to what's going on with the brothers in the main plot. It's just kind of background noise.
I'm not trying to compliment it in the way it presents the scenes. I'm just purely speaking on a technical level. Because sometimes it cuts away so quick from some of these big disaster moments. You're like, are these even like? You don't really seem to care about these disaster moments, movie, but they are there. They're absolutely happening. So very, very strange, but yeah. I mean, the movie kind of becomes more of this investigation with some disastery things going on in the background. So, I mean, I suppose it at least sticks out as being a bit different in terms of its focus than the other disaster movies. But unfortunately, it's not necessarily for the better. So
right, and that's what I was saying. I feel like there's a good movie buried underneath this one. But its focus is too split. It's too split on whether it wants to do the mystery of what's going on with this big sci-fi space station thing, or if it wants to do the big rule of cool, giant explosions and crazy weather like you haven't seen before. And it comes out neither the better. Both of them are still crap.
I mean, the only thing I'd debate there is you keep saying you think a good movie's buried under here. I think all that stuff is shit too. So I don't know why you think it would miraculously be good if it just focused on that, but...
Yeah, like, that's the thing is, based off of what we're presented, I'm not saying that if we just cut and cut and cut, we'd be left with a good movie. You'd have to film significantly extra materials to make it into a good movie, but I think the bones are there at the very least.
I'll take your word for it. I don't know if I agree necessarily, but like, yeah. I mean, what we're left with is just a bit of a, honestly, kind of it straddles this line of not being silly enough to be enjoyable as a dumb movie. So it's kind of boring in that respect, but it's also so hollow and soulless from its characters. And the one thing they try to do to make you care about the characters, or well, two things they try and do to make you care about the characters, just feels so poor. Like, I never cared about the brother relationship. I never really cared about Max, the brother, Jim Sturgess' character, and Abbie Cornish's relationship. Like, they just feel, it's like, they try and make it gimmicky. It's like, oh, she's in the Secret Service, so it's kind of forbidden, so they're making all these little jokes. And it's like, whatever. Yeah.
No, it's the character work is absolutely garbage on this. Like, I couldn't, to the point where I was so bored with what the characters were doing in the first two acts of this movie that by the time it hit the third act and everything went crazy, like, there was a brief 5-minute window where I was like, all right, okay, cool. Let's, like, we're having some fun with this. And then it went so off the wall that I ended up hating it from the other direction. Yeah. So I there was really nothing to latch onto for this one.
Yeah. And then on top of all that, just to add like a little cherry on top, it made the weird, horrible, cliched decision to have like a child narrate the intro and outro of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's so try hard to make it sound like it's important. Like, then the world came together, and if we can all work together, then our future will be okay. It's like, oh,
And the
shut
person who made the space station was my dad. I don't want to. This is more of a writing thing than an actor thing, and I don't want to shit all over a child actor, but I hate the hyper competent, very mature and emotionally aware child who is like lecturing the adults on like their shortcomings. I hate that character. And she is only in like 3 scenes, and it's every scene she does that.
Here's the thing. I don't dislike that character trope. I actually can quite enjoy that character trope.
Okay.
In the right hands. I would point you to The Nice Guys as a really positive example of the teenage girl who absolutely is like got her shit together and makes her dad look like a buffoon. It can absolutely work. And to be actually, that's one of the weird things about this child, because it's Butler's child in the movie that's doing the narration, is that in the narration, it's like sound like you're 8, sound like you're a really optimistic 8-year-old, and then when you actually get her scenes in the movie, it's like, no, she's more like a 14-year-old who is like calling her dad out on his shit, and like the characters in the narration and the characters actually in the movie, they don't actually sync up all that well.
No.
So that's
what I thought we were going for, the father-son thing of Jim Sturgess, before I realized they were brothers. I thought that this was, they were talking about, oh, we set up all this stuff in 2019 and like all this stuff set up, and then skip ahead 10 years, 15 years. Here's Jim Sturgess now as an adult, but he was the kid narrating at the beginning. But then we meet the daughter. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess that's who was narrating. Makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think I've got anything else to add before we get to spoilers, to be honest. I'm drawing a blank.
The only other thing I'd like to bring up is the idea of the disasters themselves. They, without spoiling too many of like what we specifically get here, it's all built around the idea that, global warming, climate change, we made weather worse. We made like this stuff that happens, we made weather worse for everyone on the planet, and that's something that we are able via technology to control, and that's what the whole plot of the movie is.
And actually, just to jump in there for a second, that's the other reason why it feels such like a weird starting point for this movie, is because it basically just hand waves the idea that we have a solution to climate change when we don't in the real world. So it just kind of feels like we're starting this off in a very unrealistic way, we're starting it off in a way where you're just hand waving away a very real problem that we're all facing. So I don't know, that just feels weird.
No, absolutely. Also, I mean, just to be clear, this movie was released in 2017. So like 2019 was in the future, according to the movie, when they initially set it up there. But it's one of those things that, with the benefit of hindsight, the fact that they say, and everything was at its worst possible point in 2019, and then we're staring down 2020 like, uh-oh, they didn't know. But no, I what gets me about it is there are several points in this movie where a disaster happens and there's no way it could just be weather related. Like, there's no, it's fundamentally impossible for some of the stuff in this movie that happens to be, oh, the weather got bad. And they don't make any attempt to explain it. They don't care whether or not it makes sense. They just say, yeah, no, we can control the weather. Therefore, all natural phenomena is under our control. And but we'll get to it in the spoilers, but that drove me up a wall, especially because it kept happening a lot in the third act.
I mean, this movie's technology is basically what Sean Connery was trying to launch in the Avengers, the 1998 movie.
Which is a great thing to pull from. I'm surprised more people haven't.
That was an episode of Extra Reels, one of our Patreon exclusive show, in case you're wondering, the worst movies of all time. Which, to be honest, this movie wouldn't be that out of place
no.
on that show. If I'm being frankly honest.
Honestly, if I was viewing it through that lens, I probably would give it a higher rating. I think that it would probably be a little bit like, you know what, they did good. For Baby's first movie, this is a good little attempt here.
Well, actually, the one thing I've not mentioned yet is this is directed by Dean Devlin, who typically was a producer. In fact, he produced a bunch of Roland Emmerich's movies. Interestingly, not Day After Tomorrow. He kind of stopped working with them as often by the time he got to that one, but he did a lot of Roland Emmerich's early films. I don't think this is, I don't know if this is his first directing gig, but it does feel kind of funny to me where he's kind of I'm going to direct my own movie, and I'm going to do the exact same type of schlock that I do with Roland Emmerich, except I'm directing this time.
I just imagine this is the sort of thing where, like, there's an angel and a devil on Roland Emmerich soldiers every time that he makes one of these movies. And one of them is saying, like, more, do more, make it bigger, do whatever. And that's Dean Devlin. He's the one who's pushing for that stuff. So when he finally gets the chance to do something on his own, it's just more, make it bigger, do more.
Yeah, he's done some TV episodes. The only other movie he did, which was just 1 year after this one, in 2018, he did a movie called Bad Samaritan, which I would be lying if I said I remembered this existed.
No idea. I'm looking at the poster. I'm looking at it. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of it, but it does have David Tennant and Kerry Condon in it.
Cool.
Who are people I recognize, but
yep.
That doesn't mean I think it'll be any good. In fact, quite the opposite. I'm assuming it's probably very mediocre at best. But
yep. Because of this Geostorm people hear of because it's so insane and trashy and stuff like that. Bad Samaritan, like, I don't think anyone's ever talked about that.
I bet it had at least less than half the budget of this one did.
Oh, no doubt.
I've got a funny feeling. So, spoilers, we'll say then. For Geostorm, you have been warned from this point forth. We are talking all spoilers about Geostorm. So, like I said, weather goes bad. Some big disasters happen, but they get more extreme. So the world comes together and Gerard Butler builds the space station. It's the ISS-4, the fourth version of the space station, and the network of satellites, which basically, I mean, the girl's narration at the start just kind of hand waves it as anything that, you know, affects weather, whether that be hot air, cold air, water, like the satellites can kind of spruce up and sort of balance things out whenever anything's starting to bubble up. And that's how it saves the day.
The example we see in the prologue is there's like a massive hurricane over top of some major city, and it fires down missiles or something into the hurricane that dissipate it, and everything's fine.
Yeah. I get why you're saying missiles, because it kind of looked like that at one point, but I don't think it's meant to be actual like rockets. I think it's more like, I don't know, like containers with some kind of like vapor or something that's...
But it's like fired down from space. It's some sort of containment thing,
Yes. At no point in this opening narration does she mention that it can also fire a giant laser beam like a super villain would do.
No, that's just the one. We just built one that's able to do that, and we keep it over Russia because it's funny.
I only mention it because much later on in the film, we're going to see a giant laser beam coming down from one of these satellites. Yeah. So that felt worth mentioning. It's almost like, because a big part of this movie is like, oh, I can't believe we all came together and built this for the good of everyone on the planet, for the good of mankind, and someone has turned it into a gun. And I'm like, yeah, but you did kind of build like a Bond villain's wet dream of a super weapon. I was
gonna say, look, it's very different. It's very much its own thing. But like, it just reminds me of like the Oppenheimer scenes and all that, where they're like, oh, we've discovered this great thing that could provide energy or whatever, but we're going to use it to turn it into a bomb. But the difference here is that this guy builds a gun and says, who could ever think that they'd use it as a gun? It's like, it seems like the defined purpose of it here, buddy. You're firing stuff down from space.
Yeah, so, you know, we open up on the characters with this sequence where he's coming in for kind of a hearing of some kind, and people on the ground love him. The security guard gives him his tie, because he needs a tie. So it tries to sell the character to us a little bit. And the whole thing is he comes in, and Richard Schiff plays like the senator, whoever it is, that's given this hearing. And
he plays the punching bag. He plays the one we're supposed to hate, so that way we can get Gerard Butler on our side immediately.
Yes, but Gerard Butler's told that he's in trouble for disobeying orders and punching someone and whatever else. And he just gets onto a whole thing about how, oh, you know, you weren't up there, you didn't help build this thing, Senator. You're down here. We were up there saving the world. Give me a break, you stupid politician. Like that's the vibe of
that's practically a quote. That's exactly what he said.
And his brother's at the side. We've not met him yet properly, but he's sending him texts saying, "Stop, calm down, stop antagonizing him." And he does kind of calm down, admit that he has to listen to what he's saying. But when the senator tells him he has to fire half of his staff because they're going to replace them with appointed people from various governments, he's like, F that, I'm not firing my people, you slime ball. So he gets fired, and his young brother is given the job of being in charge of the project.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So, 2 to maybe 3 things I want to bring up here. First off, this was said in the prologue, but it's also said here. The name of the project, the thing itself, is called Dutch Boy, which apparently, I vaguely remember this fairy tale or whatever of a dam or something bursting, and a young little Dutch boy puts his finger in the dam to stop it from leaking or something. They say it in the movie. It's not a good name for your project. It just comes off as sounding weird. If that's what they really want to go with, fine. But the entire time, throughout the entire movie, as they were saying it, I was like, really? That's the big science thing that can control the weather you call Dutch Boy? All right.
They always give these things kind of silly, gimmicky names.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, Gerard Butler, at the very least, never yells out, Dutch Boy is mine. He never says something like that, because that would sound quite bad.
I'm sure that was a take some point along the way. Number 2, the thing that they set up here is practically telegraphing we're about to get a time skip. They say in 3 years' time, the United States government is going to lose control of Dutch Boy, and it's going to go out as basically an open source project to the entire world. All the governments will have international cooperation on this. And Richard Schiff is super upset about this. I look, I'm as much as pointing out America's nonstop grab for greed and global control as anybody else. All for it. But this one feels especially weird because it's on the International Space Station, and it's also got already, before we start, a crew that is staffed by all of these international people. What exactly does the U.S. control about this?
They control the on-off switch, is basically what the rest of the movie tells me.
And at no other point does the on-off switch matter, so, I don't understand why they're so pissed about it. It's a weird section.
Joe, the thing is, though, you're right, but it's also the most realistic thing in the movie that some politicians would just hate the idea of giving this up and not having American control it. It's the most realistic sounding thing in the entire movie to me.
I agree, but, all I wanted was, why? What is it that you currently are able to do as America that you don't have if the whole world controls it? And it just seems like, and especially from what we get later on in the movie, they want the ability to use it as a Bond laser. They want the ability to be able to kill anyone they want, anytime they want, as a global checkmate.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, yeah. So we skip 3 years later. The brothers are now estranged. Max is now, he's flirting with the Secret Service agent, played by Abbie Cornish, and it's very clear they're already in a relationship, but they have to keep it quiet at work because technically, because he's a government employee and she's Secret Service, that's frowned upon or something. I don't know. They never really explain why they're not allowed to, but they seem to not be allowed to. So,
yeah, whatever.
Okay, fine. And it's okay, right, he's doing his job and everything's all hunky-dory, except there's a random small village in Afghanistan that has been frozen to death, right? It's all hot desert around, but there's a line in the sand, literally, where it becomes snow. And it's what did this? Something's done this. How can we deal with it? And it's oh shit, this was a malfunction or something. And he's debating with the president, and Ed Harris is there, and they're all sort of saying, what should we do? And the president's whole thing is it's an election year. I don't want to hand over damaged goods to the rest of the world. We need to fix this. How do we fix this, Max? And it's find the one person who answers to us that will go up and fix everything. So here's the thing. Well, technically Max took over as the person in charge of the project. Mm-hmm. Gerard Butler's character is the one who literally designed and built the goddamn thing. He's the only one who knows it inside and out the way he does. So Ed Harris immediately takes him aside and says, hey, go and ask your brother for this help. He's the man for the job. He's the one who knows everything.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just remembered the third thing I wanted to bring up from that previous Senate hearing scene. The thing that like I couldn't get over for the rest of the movie. Richard Schiff calls out Gerard Butler specifically because he was so pissed off. He's like, you don't follow orders, you don't do all this stuff. And the one thing he lists off is, you turned it on before we said to. How in the ever-loving hell does one man turn on an international space station and a web of satellites that covers the entire Earth without someone down on the ground saying, oh, maybe we should wait for, I don't know, approval from anybody?
Yeah, so it's a fair point. Honestly, the bigger thing for me with this time jump is, you said that it tries to get us on the side of Gerard Butler because of the way he's arguing with Schiff, because of the way he was like, admired by the security guard.
Yeah.
But honestly, him being like so like, oh, we don't talk to my brother anymore. You know, when the brother goes to see him and he's living in like a sort of trailer and he's in Florida, and it reveals that he's here because he's like in visible distance from all the launch pads of all the ships that go up to the station. Which are all very close together, by the way. Like, I'm surprised. Like, you literally see it taking off at one point in the car parks. Like, you can see it just off to this. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the blast radius on this like smoke that comes off the bottom of these rockets is pretty wide. But
you'd think so, but they've got like 17 rockets all like completely next to each other.
It's wild.
It's future tech, man.
Right, but he's, like, so Max, Jim Sturgess runs into his niece and says hello, and like she's happy to see him, and like, but as soon as Gerard Butler comes out, it's like, oh no, they've got a beef. This is like, oh, you like murdered my wife or something. That's the sort of tone the scene starts with, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but as much as I don't really like Jim Sturgess' performance and I don't really like Max as a character, I think he's just kind of bland and annoying and lame.
Right.
He did specifically try to stop Gerard Butler from getting fired. He told him repeatedly that this is going to get him fired, and then it was like, I'm sorry, but they've offered me this gig. I'm going to take it. And, and Gerard Butler, by the way, is happy that he's got the gig until he says the caveat is that I need to like fire you. Like, you have to go. And for some reason, Gerard Butler, despite at every turn clearly being on this shaky ice with everyone in charge at this thing, because he keeps ruffling feathers, has held a personal grudge with his brother for it. And I'm like, yes. You're just being a dick. There's nothing likable about this.
No, absolutely not. Here's the thing, and this is common in a lot of disaster movies, so I'm not going to hold it specifically against this one. It feels very much of the philosophy of objectivism, which specifically is the idea that the people who should be in power, the people who should be in control of things, are the people who are able to get stuff done. The people with the actual talents and the skills and doing whatever. Usually it's flipped on its head to argue that the people who are currently in power only got into power because they are worth it. And that's got its own corruption angle to it. But it's got this thing where it is super against the authority of the government. And I think that's why arguably the movie is saying that Jim Sturgess is not to be liked here. It's because he's going and he's basically the lapdog for the place that fired off the brother, despite the fact he's the one who's clearly the one who's competent enough to fix things. The problem is, I don't agree. Like, this thing is so much bigger than one man. What happens when Gerard Butler's character eventually dies? Like, are we just supposed to say, like, okay, destroy the whole thing? Like, if it's not able to be controlled by this one man, so be it. Like, it's baffling to me. The moral it's saying here is that all of this network should be under the guise of this one man, just because he's the one who's smart enough to make it.
I don't think it was saying that per se, because the whole idea is that, as we find out, it's not actually malfunctioning. Someone's sabotaging it, right? And it's just that he's good enough, because he knows it inside and out, he'll be able to find, what the problem is, and then obviously then finds out that it's been sabotaged. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a trope in a lot of these disaster movies where the person who has the skills and the smarts to deal with the disaster is the one who's not actually in a position to do anything about it, at least to begin with, right? Either they've been kicked off the force, they're retired, or, even stuff that's only tangentially disaster, like Independence Day. The one who figures everything out is Jeff Goldblum, who's got nothing to do with the White House. Or in the first half of the movie, he's trying to get there to say, hey, I figured this out, they're going to attack us, right? That's like a common trope in these types of ensemble disastery things. usually they try and make that character more likable than this. Because here he just comes off as an asshole who is holding a grudge against his brother, and even when he gets up to the station, he still doesn't want to talk to his brother. They're doing this whole strain thing, and I get that if you want to do like an arc where they're in a bad place and over the course they bond again and blah blah blah. Like I get the desire to do that, but you can do that without making like one of them extremely unlikable. Especially the one that feels like he's meant to be the big person on the poster, the one who's got the marquee kind of down.
Easiest fix, and I can't believe this movie didn't do it, but easiest fix, make him be a good dad. Because the whole thing we keep coming back to with all of his daughter scenes is that the daughter's like, you're not a good parent. Like, I love you, you're great and all that, but you're not a good parent. Just make him a really good dad, and we'll automatically be able to latch onto that as a good character trait. But even then, he doesn't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, or do something where the brother, Max, actually did do... Because in the opening, it doesn't feel like he made a choice to get rid of his brother or had any real say in it. This is just the circumstance he's been presented with. And I'm not saying make him like someone who, turned on his brother to get his new job or was scheming against him. But just give him a thing where he has to actively make a choice to kick his brother out and take the job because he believes it's the right thing to do. So then we don't think he's an asshole because he thinks he's doing the right thing. He thinks his brother's maybe going too far and he's stepping in because he believes it's the correct thing to do. Mm-hmm. But we can also say with Gerard Butler because he thinks he was doing the right thing as well. And then that gives us two sides of a debate. We can kind of see both sides, and then at the end when they've both grown, that can be something. But the way it presents this to us here is that Max technically has done nothing wrong in the eyes of the audience, and Gerard Butler's just butthurt. And it just makes him look not good. So
yep, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, he goes up to the station. They speed run this. There's like inspirational music playing as he flies up in the rocket.
God, it's so like, look, I'm willing to accept a lot with sci-fi. I'm willing to accept whatever, but like they're using a normal ass rocket ship. The technology has not progressed massively since what we know of. And it's doing stuff that is impossible for rocket ships to do. It's just not feasible. The other thing that we skipped over briefly is while that Afghanistan thing happened, we also saw that something happened up in the satellite where a guy got sucked out of an airlock, basically. And so he was looking into something right before that happened.
Yeah, there was some build up to it. I actually was kind of misreading this in the moment. I thought it was implying he was a culprit and then he was killed so that he wouldn't be able to tell anyone what he did. The rest of the movie makes it clear that he was just actually looking in at something because he felt something suspicious was happening and then was killed because he was uncovering something. So it's like, okay, all right, we get the basic idea, which actually leads us into another character I want to talk about here, and we'll do basically all of his scenes in one go, and that is Cheng, who is a guy who's living in Hong Kong, who knows Max, right? He's a scientist or whatever too, and
he's also working on the Dutch boy, the satellites and all that.
Yeah, he's doing stuff there on the ground. Yeah, he's doing algorithms and he's doing mappings of what may happen under various scenarios and whatnot. But he's looking into what's went on with this Afghanistan thing and why it's maybe doing whatever. And he tries to call Max, doesn't get an answer because it seems like he's found something. And we get a sequence where he goes to the store and the cat keeps jumping in the fridge, implying that it's getting too hot. The cat wants to cool down. Bless him. But honestly, as he was walking back to his car, the way it was kind of lingering on it, I was like, oh, he's about to be assassinated because of what he found. And it's so funny I had that thought in that moment because after several more scenes of this asshole, that's eventually what happens, right? We actually do eventually get to that point. Instead, we get like an insane disaster sequence where somehow the weather has caused all the gas pipes in Hong Kong to explode. Well, actually, it does. The surface temperature does also rise to astronomically high, right? Now, I'm not saying that would make all the gas pipes explode, but I think that's what the movie's logic is saying.
Right. Yes, that's what it's clearly getting at, this idea that it's like 150 degrees out, and that's enough to make the gas pipes rusher. I looked into it briefly of just like IMDb trivia and like goofs and stuff of like how much would it actually take. They aren't saying what the gas would combust at because that is low. But in terms of like the heat penetrating the pipes and being able to get to it, iron doesn't melt until 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a little low, just a tiny bit.
So we get this like over the top sequence where he's like running from the ground, kind of cracking with like heat and explosions coming up through it, and he gets into the tiniest car he could possibly own and drives around Hong Kong, dodging these cracks in the road, and eventually getting to a bridge. And it does this thing where when he eventually gets to this bridge after doing a lot of dodging, like the screen says the temperature outside's like dropping rapidly to a normal thing, and then it's like, okay, so this just happened. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll go. And I was thinking, okay, I thought he was going to get killed. And in fact, at one point, even when he was like racing away from like the bad stuff happening, I could have sworn a big truck was chasing him. I thought like a vehicle was specifically chasing him.
Yeah.
And then it just got like destroyed, and it never showed as a driver. So I was like, oh, I guess it wasn't someone trying to assassinate him.
It felt like the movie was making a comment, like despite the fact it seems like it's trying to do an environmental thing, I think it was trying to like poke fun of the fact of like, haha, electric vehicles can't go fast, because this big truck was like stuck behind his little itty bitty electric car, and that's why it got smashed. But no, yeah, everything in this sequence felt like an assassination attempt. It felt like this one guy, because he pulled up whatever on his computer and it said access denied, he's flagged something in the system and they are immediately trying to kill him. But nope, not true. This was just all part of the larger plan that just happened to chase him down these city streets.
Because I almost did think at the end of this, I was like, oh, maybe it was an assassination attempt, but they were just willing to kill the entire, like, you know, city to kill him, because they didn't care about the collateral damage, and this would look, you know, it wouldn't look like an assassination attempt because, hey, thousands of people died in it, so it's like, whatever. But we later find out from this very character that he's basically been able to figure out like the order of the cities that are going to be hit, because like all these models have been run, and once they have 3 examples, they'll know what the next several are going to be, because if it's Afghanistan first, then Hong Kong second, and then it's like, oh shit, well all you need is one more, and then you can sort of, you know, the exact list that's going to happen for the rest of it.
To be clear, the order of events, the thing that he is predicting for, is Geostorm.
Well, that's the end. That's the end of it. All these things build up to a geostorm. What is a geostorm, you might ask?
I don't know, Pete. What is it?
Dear viewer. Well, a geostorm is apparently when so many big, giant weather things start happening around the globe. They start having a chain reaction where they make more storms, and then eventually just turn into one giant storm that's on the entire planet. And I'm like, okay, so basically all the stuff we see in this movie is legitimately just everything that was in Day After Tomorrow on steroids, as stupid as that sounds, because there's scenes with tornadoes where there shouldn't be tornadoes, there's scenes where there's tidal waves where there shouldn't be tidal waves, there's the hailstones, even in, it's the same goddamn city, it's Tokyo again that gets the hailstones, and then there's instant freezing happening in multiple places. It's like, oh, it's just all the same shit as Day After Tomorrow, but you know, and maybe that was the point. Maybe he's like, oh, Roland didn't let me work on Day After Tomorrow, I'm going to use all those things again.
I can't get Jake Gyllenhaal, who looks vaguely enough like him. Oh, hey, Jim Sturgess.
So anyway, so this guy Cheng, right, he phones Max a couple times, says, I need to talk to you, and he specifically doesn't say where it is. He just says, hey, meet me across from where we used to hang out in college. And it's like, oh, so just in case anyone's listening, they won't actually know what that means. They'll just, you know.
Yeah, and someone also raided his office as well. Someone busted in and tried stealing stuff.
Yeah, and he has to hide. So I'm like, okay, the fact that he has survived bad guys coming to his office and raiding his desk, and he's like hiding from that, I'm like, okay, clearly this is a major character. Maybe I was selling him short by assuming he was going to be killed in the scene before this. And then as soon as he gets to the US, as soon as he's in Washington and he goes to see Max, immediately evil government man just pushes him in front of a car and he dies. And I'm like, what the hell, movie? I literally saw this coming in his first scene, and you made me watch like 5 scenes of this asshole before we finally got to the... And I get that, okay, it had to happen in front of Max to convince Max that something really nefarious is going on, so he'd get really paranoid and start believing things. But, like, other than that, it just felt like, oh, we delayed this guy's death for, like, you know, 30 minutes when it could have just been done ages ago. He could have like sent a text explaining the basics of what he was going to tell him anyway, and then be killed in Hong Kong, and that's it. Done. We've set up that people are trying to cover the tracks of what, you know, whoever's behind this. They're going to great lengths to kill anyone who's finding stuff out, and that's all that was needed.
You could have easily condensed down this character like twofold by having him just send the file on Project Zeus, which is the extrapolation software that we're talking about here. Have him send the file on that stuff with like zero explanation, and have Max have to figure that out. Have him having like work through like, all right, what are we looking at here? What are these things going on? And then he figures out to like type in the Afghanistan city and then Hong Kong or whatever. And you know what you get out of that? You get to cut the hacker character as well, because she didn't do jack shit outside of that.
Yes. Yeah, Zazie Beetz is just his hacker friend who also works in the government, who's willing to do hackery things for him. That's it. That's her entire character.
That's it. That's everything. And it's she's not a bad like character independently. Like it's not like she's annoying me like the hacker from The Core, but she's not a character. She's not fleshed out. There's not enough here.
I mean, I know you say that. She needs a hot pocket or two. Just like, you know, she reaches for a hot pocket every so often.
There is a sequence in this movie after she's brought in with Jim Sturgess and the Secret Service agent lady, the girlfriend, and Sturgess says something about like, look, this is bigger than you and me. And then she corrects him by saying, it's actually you and I. And they both tell her to shut up. And that's already like condescending enough on its own, like the fact that she would correct the grammar. But it turns out she's wrong. Like the actual grammatically correct is you and me in that situation. And everyone online calls her out of like, if you're going to be pedantic, be right about it.
I mean, yeah, that's just the writer's fault, right? I mean, unless it was intentional, but I can't imagine why it would be intentional in this case. There's nothing about it.
She's supposed to be smart.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. So see when he started getting the first phone calls from Cheng, and like, you know, Abbie, Cornish is like in the room and they're talking about their relationship and being secret, and they're joking around, and he's like, like if it was me or the president about to get shot, which one would you save? And she like jumps in and says president immediately without having to think about it. And I'm like, okay, that's a mildly amusing bit. But
yeah, well, they play it off specifically for the bit of saying like, that's my job. My job will always come first. And the course of this movie is you're supposed to think she's the one who's the mole,
that's what I'm getting at. As soon as he starts getting phone calls, she's like in the background, and I'm like, is she listening to those? She's listening to this conversation. She's being suspicious. And the funny thing is, it's not even like there's a definitive point where like she proves she isn't. It's really just the second like Cheng gets hit by the car and the way she kind of chases after the car and like takes out her gun, I'm like, oh no, I think she is just on the level. I don't think she is the bad guy.
See, I didn't think it was there. I thought that was all still part of the act, because she didn't shoot at the car. As the car was driving away, she pulled out her gun, but she didn't fire at it. And I'm like, oh, that's suspicious. Why wouldn't you do that? Honestly, I wasn't convinced she was on the level until she helped to kidnap the president. It was way deep in the movie where I was like, okay, all right.
The funny thing is, maybe it's because I'd seen it before and I just had some vague memory that wasn't going to turn out to be her. But for some reason, as soon as we got to that part, I'm just like, oh, I don't think it's her. And also, like, the second there's a villain even like floated, like the idea that there's a bad guy, I'm like, well, it's Ed Harris. Ed Harris is the main bad guy. Like, there's no way it's anyone but him. So, you know, because especially since it's easy to put two and two together, like, oh, he's recommending Gerard Butler because he wants a loser. He wants someone who's going to fail because everyone thinks he's a loser now. So,
and he was the one who handpicked Max to take charge of this situation because he knew that he would pick his brother and be able to get him up there.
Yes. So, bunch of you know, conniving and whatnot. But there is a short period in the middle where everyone's convinced it's the president. And that's actually what gets them into trouble with Ed Harris, is that Max tells Ed Harris all this, and Ed Harris is just like, and that's the scene where, you know, if you didn't already think he's the villain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, as soon as he's the one listening to like all these things about what's going on, you're like, oh, you're just telling the bad guy what his plans are, and he's going to kill you for it, or at least try to.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
It's the sequence where he's like just trying to bait out how much do you actually know and how many people have you told, because that's going to change whether or not I do this right now or I do it in like 30 seconds.
Yeah. And sure enough, you know, like that all plays out. So anyway, so that's all go down the ground with him trying to hack into these things, figure out what's going on. And then combined with that, right after Ching's death is when it kind of intersects back with the Gerard Butler plot, which, that's been going on in the background where he's been meeting the people on the station. We talked about some of the scenes where he said he's from the UK and all that. But,
yeah,
we get interested in an ensemble group of characters, and foolish for me for thinking, this is going to be a main little group that we get to know, and they're going to be like our little team on the station. Like, one turns out to be the saboteur working for Ed Harris, right? That's the annoying English guy.
God, I hated him so much.
But there's like 3 other people who are just kind of like basically red shirts. There's like a Mexican guy. There's a black lady with an accent. I didn't quite catch what country she was from. But like, they're just kind of there. They have a couple of one-liners, and that is it. They're not a team at all. It's really just Gerard Butler and the other lady. I think it's Fassbinder, who's like who was running the station before he came up. So, she ends up just kind of being partners with him in the investigation. And the big thing up here is that when they go out to retrieve a part of the port that blew out when the guy died, there's like a chip on it or something they need to try and get data off it, which that sounded far-fetched to me as well when they were explaining all that bollocks. But regardless, when they go out to retrieve it in spacesuits, someone has sabotaged his suit, and he almost goes flying off into space because his jetpack thing starts to malfunction.
Yeah. The whole bit of it is that they know it's sabotage, but they want to check for, I think, corruption in the drives, and every drive gets updated all at the same time. So whatever sucked this dude out of the airlock, they're going to check the drive that's in the door, and one of the doors was still lodged against the side of the space station. But yeah, no, that the whole thing with the suit going crazy and like starting to blow him around all over, and it's basically just a scene from Gravity. They're just like sending him out into deep space and he doesn't grab on quick enough. Much worse. They end the scene by showing that he did somehow manage to get the drive and actually managed to hold on to it despite the fact he lost the rest of the door. But like, what gets me about the sequence is that when he lands, he tells Fassbinder, he's like, yeah, that was clearly sabotage. Someone just tried to kill me, so let's keep it on the hush-hush that I have this drive. But when everyone else comes in, he's just like, guess it was more computer glitches that just happened to target only me at that one point where I could bring in the evidence to prove it was computer glitch. Oh, well. And they just drop it and trust him?
Well, the thing that bothered me about this is kind of from a different angle to me. It was more so he comes in and then the group all come in and he kind of lies to them and doesn't and basically he lies that he even got the drive. He's like, we didn't I didn't get it. That's the big deal. Basically letting the saboteur think that there's nothing to kill him for anymore because the evidence has been lost. And then Fassbinder's like, hey, why did you lie to him? He's like, well, someone just tried to kill me. We don't know who it is. Like, it was someone on this station. And my problem with this, like, I get why he's lying to them. What I don't get is why he's immediately trusting her. Because at this point, I was starting to think, what if she turns out to be the saboteur?
Yeah. My only thought process is if he keeps it away from everybody, and he trusts her, then he's able to like suss it out that way. But if things keep on happening while she's the only one who knows about it, then he can prove it's her as well. Like it could go either way there, depending on what happens.
Yeah, I think the big thing is here, because I feel like as we're describing this probably sounds like a competent plot, because it sounds almost like, this works because it's like, he's playing them against each other. The problem is though is that all of these characters are barely characters. They're basically a face and a name, and like the one guy who's got a bit of an asshole streak is he's got a bit of a personality, I guess, but it's not a likable personality. But
are you talking about the British guy?
The British guy, aye.
I hated that character.
Oh, he's awful.
Like just from the but not even in a way I think the movie intended. Like the movie obviously doesn't want you to like this guy. He's supposed to be abrasive, but like I hated him on the same way that like babies crying I don't like. Like you don't put that in because it just hits something deep in the core of your human.
Because they do a thing with him where when Gerard Butler says he was born in the UK, he responds with some obnoxious thing where he's like, I'm, loyal to the British, like something, right? Which obviously is like ironic foreshadowing because he turns out to be the traitor who's working for Ed Harris. But it just, I don't know, like, that, it felt like such an obvious thing for him to be the bad guy that I was like, he has to be a red herring. But I guess they try and cover up, like, instead of like giving you someone who's nice that turns out to be a bad guy, because I guess they're already doing that with Ed Harris, their tactic on the station to like conceal the saboteur is to make the French guy look like he's always really suspicious. Like he's always sort of staring, like, oh, he must be the bad guy because he looks evil. No, it's the annoying one. The annoying one is whining all the time. He's the bad guy.
It's literally the same thing they're doing in the Other Brother plot with the Secret Service agent. Like, oh, she's suspicious, hanging out in the background, just listening to phone calls. But nope, turns out that she's the one that you can trust the most because he has this personal thing with the guy who got sucked out of the airlock.
Yes. So he ends up helping once they actually kind of like have a big confrontation where he pulls a gun on them. And everyone seems cool with that after the fact when he puts it down. Although, all I could think was, why are you letting people bring guns out of the space station? That seems like a foolish idea.
Yes. Okay, so I thought about it, and my only thing is like, look, when you've got an International Space Station that has like 6 people on it, fine, you can get away with not having a gun because you just like tackle the person basically. But when you've got 600 people on it, as this movie has flaunted, you need some security. You need to have a few people there that actually have guns. That being said, they should not just be available for whoever the hell wants to hold on to them. They should be available to a very specific group of people.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I agree with you need guns to police 600 people. I don't know if I agree with that, to be honest.
This was an American movie, Pete. You need guns to police 600 people.
I don't know. The police mostly do fine here without them, but all right.
This might come out of date depending on how quick this situation moves, but let's just assume Gerard Butler comes from Minnesota.
Oh, jeez. All right. So by this point, like, he goes on the video call to the brother, and in their first, well, not the first scene, but the scene where he comes to get him and the daughter's there, like, the brother brings up, oh, we used to have a secret code that we talked in as children. We were really close. And it's like such a hot, obvious, like, well, this is coming up later, kind of like planting. But sure enough, like, Gerard Butler's like, I wanted to apologize for how he spoke, and he's like, I just watched my friend. I don't have time for this bullshit. Leave me alone. And as Max is walking out the room, he's like, you don't walk out on each other. That's the code between brothers. And like Sturgess like just stops in his tracks and he turns and looks. And then Gerard Butler starts like saying this story about, oh, it reminds me when we went fishing with Dad, and this happened and this happened. And so he gets all this call recorded. Right, Sturgess clearly knowing that he's been spoken to in code, and he takes it to hacker friend Zazie Beetz, and he's like, "Hey, this is like the way." And I was thinking, oh, it's just a simple thing where like, you know, every X word is whatever, right? But somehow, like, the way they treat it in the scene, it's almost like timing's part of it, because Zazie Beetz literally just sort of goes do, and like gets like all the clips in the timeline, it just squished together as if it's an algorithm. And if this is like so perfectly timed, how many times did Gerard Butler's character rehearse this to make sure the timing was down for this secret code?
Here's the thing, the rehearsal part is definitely necessary. It's not timing. The way they explain it is that the first thing that he said after the code line was, remember, something cell. He uses the word key and cell in the same sentence.
Yes.
And because of that, his cell phone number is the key. And then what you're supposed to do is whatever word he says, you take from the first word, and then you count, say his phone number starts with like 443 or something. Then like you count ahead 4 numbers, then 4 more letters, 4 words, then 4 more words, then 3 more words, and you take whatever those are.
Okay.
However,
none of this explains how Zazie Beetz just magically goes do cut. Oh, there we go. We can play it back perfectly so that he's saying the sentence out.
I really want to be clear here. Zazie Beetz is not required for this movie.
Yes.
There is nothing in this movie that requires her to be here.
Yes. So yeah, basically all he's saying is, the government, someone from within the government is a traitor, saboteur, whatever, a spy. Don't trust anyone. Yeah, don't trust anyone. So it's like, okay, all right. So that's set up. He wants to go and try and figure things out, and he wants to get Zazie Beetz to hack into like the files, but you need White House like network access. It's like, we don't have logins for that. And he's like, aha, but my attractive girlfriend does, because she's Secret Service. Which I don't like. Would the Secret Service have access to like the secure files that are stored?
No.
It doesn't feel like they would need them.
She seems like she's like really high up in the Secret Service because she's like calling shots later on. So maybe she would, but your average Secret Service agent, no way.
Yeah. Which also, it's like, I can't imagine someone, not that she's like super young, like she's probably like 30 or something like that here, but like, I can't, or maybe 35, but whatever. Like, I feel like whoever's like in charge of like the Secret Service or really high ranking in the Secret Service, I have to imagine they're always at least in their 50s. Just because it feels like a position you only get to once you've been like in the ranks for a long time. I could be wrong.
Well, she's proven herself. She's shown how competent she is and that she's definitely never, ever gonna break any of the rules for any reason.
Well, like kidnapping the president?
I was even just talking about dating. She seems very willing to break all the rules all the time.
Even though she keeps saying she doesn't, but yeah. Right. That said, though, I bet if you look through the Secret Service rule book, I bet there's nothing in there that specifically says you cannot kidnap the president.
That's weird. It's right on the other page of dogs can't play basketball. Huh. Weird how that page never makes it to print.
I mean, I suppose you're just meant to assume that because kidnapping is normally illegal, that it's also a rule for the Secret Service.
I was going to say, rule number 1, protect the president. Rule number 2, don't kidnap. If they don't put them together, how am I supposed to know?
I'm kidnapping to protect him.
Yeah. To be fair, yes. And I believe that's also the justification Nick Cage used in the second National Treasure movie.
Oh, I never saw the second one.
It's enjoyable. I actually kind of like it more than the first one, but only because it's so silly.
I can't say I was particularly fond of the first one myself, but...
Oh, well, if you don't like that, if you don't like the theme of it, you're not going to like the second either.
That's fair. So, right, so we get this whole thing, and by this point, the Geostorm is going to happen, to the point where the computer on the space station has a 90-minute countdown timer to the exact second the Geostorm will start, which is just the most movie bullshit ever.
Look, if you're ever in a film class or something like that, don't take anything out of this movie. But if you are specifically looking for a movie that clearly defines the break in acts, this is the clearest distinction between Act 2 and Act 3 I have ever seen in my life. Because all of a sudden, all at once, every satellite starts going rogue and starts firing down crazy shit. Like every single one of them.
Yeah. We see a wave hit Brazil, but it freezes, and then the freezing sort of chases them across the beach and starts freezing people alive. We see a tidal wave hit Dubai, which...
as weather tends to do, giant tidal waves and whatnot.
Yeah, but Dubai... Where's the nearest water to Dubai?
So, it is on the coast. There is a coast area to it. My problem is that the first shot of that scene showing the wave coming in goes over this dude, basically a racist character of this dude on a camel in the middle of a desert. And the wave hits him first and then goes for the rest of Dubai, which, no, it's on the coast. You can't do that.
It's coming from inland is what you're saying. It's coming from the other side.
Oh, yeah. It turns out the entire Middle East is underwater and Dubai's the last one to live.
Because that was the thing, is that the visual that's meant to look insane is that there's a tidal wave coming over desert. That's why I'm like, where's the water here? But yeah, fair enough, it's on the coast on the other side. But that's...
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So that's happening. There's also just a laser beam of heat melting parts of like Moscow, where you can see like the roofs melting.
I kind of understand that they wanted to do a thing where it's like, okay, Dubai is dry, it's desert. We want to show a tidal wave because it's an image. The flip side of that is Moscow is cold and snowy. We want to show it being like a heat wave, but we can't just make it hot because there's no visual to that. What are we supposed to do? So they do a space laser, and it's dumb. It's so dumb.
All right, and then eventually, of course, a lightning storm starts hitting the Democratic Convention, which is where the president is, and it's where Max is going to tell Ed Harris everything, and Ed Harris is going to try and kill him, and then eventually Abbie Cornish is basically lured into, we have to kidnap the president to save his life because we can't trust anything Ed Harris is doing.
Yeah, so there's like 3 points to that. The first is the conversation that he has. Somehow he managed to have a conversation with Gerard Butler off the books. Like everything else before this point was recorded, but then they're like, okay, we don't want to have to do the code thing again. So we're just going to bring in ZZ Beats and say, okay, hey, this is off the books now. And they say that the only way to wipe out this virus and do all that stuff is to reboot the system, is to restart the satellite system.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Turn it off and on again is what we're saying here.
Exactly.
Yes.
They do a whole explanation, but that's all they're doing. But the only way to do that is codes that the president has. So now Jim Sturgess' whole plan is we have to get the codes from the president. They basically say the only time that's going to happen is after the DNC. After he gives a speech, he's going to be in the shower. We can get the codes off of him at that point. They then talk to Ed Harris because Ed Harris calls him out on, like, you shouldn't be here. What are you doing? And he says, look, it's this whole thing. Geostorm. It's a thing. We need the codes from the president. And Ed Harris, the villain who would have every intention of covering his tracks, says there are no kill codes. It's all biometrics.
Oh,
you would have to actually have the president to stop it.
That's bothered me as well, because he says this, and then of course he leads Max to a room where he tries to shoot him, and Max, is able to get away and scurries away. And then when he runs back into Abbie Cornish, she's like, oh, so what's going on? He's like, oh, it's Ed Harris. Ed Harris is the bad guy. And she's like, okay, we have to get the president's codes. And he's like, no, the president is the codes. It's his biometrics and eye scans. And I'm like, the villain the one who just told you that is the least, and it turns out to be true. That's the crazy thing about it, is that Ed Harris told him the truth. Why would he tell him the truth?
I don't know. They make no reference to it, and the fact that it was the truth, it doesn't, like, the only thing I could think is you don't want to have to juggle multiple lies. If you're going to tell a lie, you tell one lie, and then you try to lie on top of that. That's the only thing I could think. But the other part of it that's so insane is that the reason that the plan took place the way it did, and the reason that, like, the other things had to be hit first, is that the only way to cause a geostorm, Ed Harris's plan here, is that he's going to, A, cause storms in all of the major cities that are not allied with America, so that way he can put America back at the top of everything.
I'm sorry.
Also,
was Japan's relationship to America in a rocky place?
He's still stuck in that mid-90s phase where they were outpacing us technologically. He never quite got out of that one.
Hong Kong's not a good terms with America.
He really wants to make China work. He wants it to be cool with China.
Look, I get Moscow.
So
I kind of get Moscow, I suppose, but that's a bit...
Absolutely.
Well, in Afghanistan, I suppose, but just because of the...
Yeah, that one too. Especially that tiny little village. They were a real problem there.
Oh, weapons of mass destruction under that hut, I'm sure.
Yep. The other thing, and the reason why the DNC is being attacked with lightning strikes, is that despite everything we know about everything, the entirety of the presidential line of succession is apparently here at the DNC. So they'll all be killed, and he can then take the role as next president.
Yes, he is going to take over as president, and he's proud of the fact that he's taken out all of America's enemies, and that he will then reign supreme. And I'm just like, what?
It's a convoluted plot.
Okay, all right, sure. You're lucky you got Ed Harris try to sell some of this shit, because like this would, I mean, it's not doing well here, but it would completely buckle and fall apart with almost anyone else saying it.
If you flip the roles of Andy Garcia and Ed Harris, this movie would be like 3 times worse, and that's impressive.
The funny thing is, I feel like they cast Andy Garcia as president because they wanted us to believe that the president was the bad guy, because Andy Garcia has turned out to be the villain several times before in other movies, and that's what was coming to my mind. So the whole thing here leads to a chase sequence where they get the president, they throw him into the little car as the lightning storms are like, actually, they eventually blow up the entire arena that they were in originally. It just goes boom. But they're driving away from lightning strikes, but also a car of bad guys chasing them, trying to shoot them and get to the president. So there's ducking, there's diving, there's going under a bridge. Eventually, Ed Harris gets like a guy with a rocket launcher to like take out the car, but they've seen this coming somehow, and they're not in the car, and they come up and apprehend Ed Harris after the fact. And this is like a solid 5-minute sequence, by the way, of them in this car chase with the lightning strikes.
Oh yeah, no, there's a bit where we see all the crazy driving that the Secret Service lady's able to do, and she like whips the car around, starts driving in reverse, firing her pistol out the driver's side door. It's a whole thing. Pretty typical in Florida, all things admitted.
It's her big scene though. It's kind of like, hey, she's actually, the movie's trying to say she's the badass that we've been saying she is this entire movie. Yes. She is able to protect them.
To which point she then ends up ramming the car that's chasing her from the side because they managed to lose him. It flips over several times, and then I'm just sitting there watching like, it's going to blow, it gets struck by lightning and blow up. It's going to get struck by lightning and blow up.
Of course.
And then like 30 seconds later, boom, it blows up. What I didn't expect was Andy Garcia, because they've been talking about how they're engaged but not married, or like dating or whatever. Andy Garcia turns to Jim Sturgess, is just like, marry her. And I'm like, all right, that's, if you're going to give me any little character thing, fine, I'll take that little bit.
So it's like, okay. And while this is going on, and to be honest, at this point, I was starting to really lose the plot of the space station stuff. Like, effectively, a self-destruct has been triggered because of the Geostorm happening or something, and it's like everyone's evacuating, but Gerard Butler's like, oh, someone has to be here when the codes come up so he can do the kill switch. So it's like it's like a self-sacrifice thing. He's going to have to be the one up here when the station goes boom. And the brother doesn't like hearing this when he calls up to him. And it's like the emotional goodbye and whatever. He's like, oh, it's not your fault. I'm doing the right thing. Blah 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 blah.
To be clear, just barely not emotional enough for me to buy it. I'm like, nah, you didn't quite sell it enough. He's gonna be fine.
Yeah, because they do a whole thing here where he has to put on a spacesuit and go and like punch in the thing, and it's like the lady's like having to help him, right? She's stuck behind as well, and she's like going to hit a button to say, and they basically stop the Geostorm when it's like 3 seconds from happening. They do the classic, it's almost at zero, hit the button. And I love the idea that despite all the codes that need to be put in and all the other parts you've put into this to try and make it more exciting, ultimately this was a nuclear timer counting down that was fixed by turning off Windows and turning it back on again. There is something inherently really funny and stupid about that.
I completely lost the plot of this section, and I don't mean that in terms of I don't understand what's happening, but you have two separate things going on here. Two timers running. The timer to Geostorm and the timer for the self-destruct.
Yes.
Everything they're saying, every single bit of this is, oh man, if we don't get this done or whatever, the Geostorm's going to happen. But then they're talking about the self-destruct and saying everyone needs to evacuate. And maybe I just had it flipped in my head, but all I could think is, if it's going to blow up, who cares? Like, the Geostorm will stop when the thing blows up. Like, you haven't done a good enough job convincing me as to why we need to reboot if the whole thing's going to blow up 30 seconds later anyway.
Because, okay, I actually can't explain this. I got it from the movie. So the thing that's rebooting isn't the space station. The thing that's rebooting is the entire satellite network, which is still going to be there and still needs to be there to keep the weather in check, forever. So it's just the space station that's blowing up, and that's why that doesn't affect the rebooting, right? The control to reboot it's on there, I believe, but they do need to reboot the satellites. So that's what's happening. And then once the station blows up, they hid in one of the satellite things, and then like the space shuttle just kind of finds them, and it's like, aha, everyone's actually okay. Like Gerard Butler's daughter's crying. We actually see her mum like in like one brief scene of her like sitting down next to her and be like, it's okay, honey. And that's she's trying.
She's like, I'm trying to call your dad down in Florida because these lightning storms are crazy. Do you know where he is? And the kid points to the TV, being like, he's up there. I'm like, you didn't clear this with your ex-wife? You didn't tell her, hey, I'm going back into space. Don't send the kid down next weekend.
So, yeah, I mean, we get everyone's heartfelt hugs when they all land, and Abbie Cornish is like, oh, I'm going to be your sister-in-law, and yeah, everyone's happy, everyone hugs, blah, 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 who gives a shit? And the movie ends with the two brothers and the daughter sitting at the end of a pier fishing, and they all admit that they hate fishing, and they stop fishing, and then the little girl narrates us out about how we'll all be fine, and we all share one future, world peace, yada, yada, yada.
I really want to just harp on the fishing thing for a second there.
Please do.
Because the fishing thing, we skipped over it, but the story that he told while giving the code, the thing with the words hidden inside of it, was a story about how their dad took them fishing. And The whole fishing thing, they admit in movie, in dialogue, they say was supposed to be a callback to that story. But they also admit in movie that story never happened. They never went fishing with their dad. So after this time jump of 6 months later, after everything that happened, they wanted to do a callback to a story that never happened. And they as they're walking away, they're like, that was dumb. Why did we even do that? I'm like, I don't know, movie. Why did you do that?
It's almost like it's like a weird attempt to be meta about like, and poking fun at story structure. Like, oh, you want to call back to something at the end, but they're calling back to a fake thing, so the characters are going to point it out and say, that's weird. Why are we calling back to that? It never happened. Like, it feels like they're trying to be witty, but every attempt that this movie makes to try and be witty, I genuinely falls flat. The movie's too dumb to actually carry wit alongside it. It doesn't work.
Yes. No, you're right. You're right. And that's, I think that's kind of what disappointed me the most. Once I realized that the whodunit plot was not actually going to work, once I realized that was not the focus, it was very obvious, oh, it's because you're not smart enough to do it. As a movie, you're not intelligent enough to pull that off. Well,
I would counter one thing you said there. As you said, it's not the focus. I think the problem is that it is the focus and they don't pull it off because if anything, I think it might get more screen time than like Butler up in the station trying to solve things. Like it's almost the A plot for a good chunk of the movie, and I was not feeling all that compelled by any of it. So we're doing this whodunit like thriller conspiracy plot, like with a disaster movie as the background, and I just don't think it works. At least not here. Maybe there's a version of this that could work, but this was not it. And I think part of the problem here, and I'm really noticing, because I think we've been generally a bit more negative this entire season compared to past disaster seasons, and I think part of it is simply that as effects got more and more digital, right, and they pivoted to just doing everything in CG, there for some reason it's like, hey, we can do anything with this now, but it also seemed to mean that there was no attempt to make the scripts like semi-passable. There was no attempt to do anything else that wasn't CG for some of the effects. So we have all these elaborate visuals and a crazy premise that is like held together with duct tape and doesn't like, say what you will about, you know, Dante's Peak getting a little bit silly, but it still like functioned well enough as a movie, even with any faults. And certainly once you go back to the 70s stuff, like, you know, I'm praying for like almost all the airport movies, you know, watching this one.
Absolutely. That's one thing I noticed specifically in this season is the decline / destruction of fleshing out the ensemble, fleshing out these characters that we're going to get to know and have a good time with and do all this big stuff with. It just feels like they're there specifically to spout the exposition, to have these big moments. But what gets me about this movie and what makes this one particularly bad in this season is that they don't even want to do the disaster stuff. Like the disaster stuff feels like the consequence of the rest of it.
Which is so weird because like out of all this more CG heavy ones, and you could count Armageddon in that and Deep Impact, I suppose, but certainly from the core onwards this season, they're CG heavy, and the CG in the core looks pretty bad. It's sometimes really, really shit. The CG in Day After Tomorrow, it was a bigger production, but even it did have its fringes. It did feel like it was right on the cutting edge of what they could do at the time, but did have its limits. This one, the effects are at a point where like they can kind of get away with it. Admittedly, I think some smarter directing choices to make it feel more real would be needed, but like from a technical perspective, this is the one where they could just do a bunch of stuff and it would probably look fairly good. And they just don't want to focus on it. They want to do other things instead that they're also not doing very well. So it's kind of baffling. And the characters are just a complete, you know, wash. There's nothing here to like in the characters.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that I don't know what was reshot, but apparently there were $15 million of reshoots like after the initial cut was put together. I'm curious to know which way it went. Did we add in more of the whodunit stuff, like explain more of that along the way and cut down on the disaster, or did we add more disaster effects?
It would be so easy to add half of those in, right? Because like they're so separate from everything else. Like, because if you think about the ones they actually mention in the movie, like they don't mention the stuff happening in Dubai that's knocking the wave that's knocking over the towers. They don't mention what's happening in Moscow. Like those like segments that they could easily have been added in like after the fact, where they said, "Oh, we just want some more disaster porn, so let's do a few little, running snippets, and we'll just pick some cities and do it there."
Yeah, no, and I mean even the other stuff is as much as they don't mention the Dubai stuff, it is all of the marketing. Like the big wave, the big tidal wave is the big thing there, but that easily could have been done after the reshoots were done, because this movie got delayed heavily. Apparently it was initially meant to be like 2013 or 2015, and then it just kept getting pushed down the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the key art would have been pretty late on. Like they might have like, hey, we need something we can actually build posters around, because none of these other disasters give us a poster. So they may have even just built that entirely so they could market it for what it was.
Possible. I'll also say that I did kind of feel a little weird at the end. This is something that happens in all disaster movies, but they tend to soften the blow. Where other disaster movies, yes, a lot of people die, but they acknowledge it. They make us aware of like, yes, these people are dead. We couldn't save them all, but at least there's this smaller group that survived, or at least there's not as many died as could have. This movie, they are literally doing the inspirational music of like, yes, we stopped it, as Dubai is still under 6 feet underwater. Like there are still people actively dying.
And we saw, and actually another one they could have added was the freezing scene in Brazil, right, where the ice chases them down the beach into the streets, and like, there's buses and cars getting frozen, and it does like sort of pick a main character weirdly for that. Whereas there's this one girl in a bikini who's like running from the ice, and it eventually gets to her at the end of the sequence.
Oh god! Like I thought they were dumb with the Hong Kong thing of the road splitting open as this guy was like in his little electric car, and he's literally riding along the crack as it opens up in the ground. But this woman, she's running down the streets as the freeze is chasing her. I'm like, okay, that's fine. She's outrunning the cold wave, whatever that is. And then a plane drops down out of the sky and lands like 13 feet behind her, and she's fine. And
it also smashes like it's because it's frozen, so it smashes like the T-1000, like it's something that's just like glass hitting like the ground. And I mean, it doesn't completely shatter, but like a lot of it shatters as it's coming down in between these two buildings. And I'm like, at least give me the full thing. Give me the full plane just crumbling like ice. Go on, do it. If you're really going to go for it, just do the stupid visual.
It's so dumb. Like that's the thing, is once this movie hit the third act, I transitioned from, okay, maybe this could have been a good whodunit, but it doesn't seem to. As soon as that Geostorm timer counted up, I'm like, oh, nothing matters. Like we can make up whatever we want to at this point. Nothing is going to matter, and it's all just going to happen as bombastically and huge as humanly possible. So I immediately just turned off my brain, and even that wasn't enough. I was still sitting there thinking, wow, this is dumb.
The problem is that, it spends time setting up. Butler has to go up and fix this problem, but then it relegates it to almost the B plot. It doesn't develop the stuff up there enough. It doesn't show him working with the others. Maybe that stuff that was cut and they took it out when they did reshoots or something. Who's to say? But like, if you're going to do the actual the thriller of trying to find the saboteur who potentially is going to cause a worldwide disaster, which also does beg the question, like, where was Ed Harris going to hide while this Geostorm was happening?
The British dude, when Gerard Butler confronted him and said, you made the computer virus, the British dude is called out because he says, okay, they're paying you a butt ton of money. Where are you going to spend it? All of humanity is going to be dead. And he says, oh, that's all right. We're keeping the best places intact. That's all we get. The best places.
There's a couple of cities that they happen to like that they aren't going to hit because it doesn't sound like they've got control of the Geostorm once it starts actually geostorming. It sounds like they've got control of how it starts, but once the Geostorm is going, it kind of sounds like the Geostorm is going to do whatever it wants. So
absolutely.
I don't know. That doesn't make much sense to me.
This is just what's poorly defined about Geostorm. Like ever since, because the first guy who says it is Chang. The first guy, he calls up Max and says, like, you don't understand. If this all happens, we're looking at a Geostorm. And then Max clarifies, like, what the hell's a Geostorm? And even then, I'm like, it's made up. Don't question it.
That's the thing. It sounds like such even if you take it at its face value of like, okay, this is a theoretical thing that can happen if all these storms kick up and they have a chain reaction, they keep starting more storms and it turns into one big storm. that is theoretically what we'd call a geostorm. But it does sound heavily theoretical. Like, it doesn't sound like something that's ever happened in at least the knowledge of the planet's history. So the fact that the computer voice goes, Geostorm in 90 minutes, threat imminent, Geostorm, countdown to Geostorm, as if it's like, this is not something that is like a standard thing that you would be programming into this thing. Like, this is a theoretical thing. So why would, I don't know, like, it's a dumb movie.
I wanted them to try to make the equivalent of, like, because that was Day After Tomorrow. They specifically show there are these 3 huge hurricane systems in the northern hemisphere that are basically going to send us into the next ice age. Take that and just say, look, they're going to be feeding into each other. It's just going to turn all of Earth into one massive storm system. That's not going to stop it forever. And just have it be storms. Like, actual, you call it geostorm, make it storms. I don't need a tidal wave. I don't need the gas mains exploding. I don't need a space laser in Russia. Just make them goddamn rainy, windy, maybe tornado forming storms.
No, Dean Devlin's like, no, I want to play with all these different things. I want to do all these different disasters.
You've been playing with those toys for 30 years now. Put them away. Do something else.
No,
Not Bad Samaritan.
No, Roland was playing with them. Dean had to like make sure the money was there for it, and then he didn't get to play with them. He wants to play with them this time. This is his turn.
He was paying for them, and now that Roland taking a break, he's like, give me those. Push.
Oh, geez. Honestly, yeah, like, this is, it's making me appreciate Day After Tomorrow a little bit, and that is wild. This
is something that also happened with Moonfall, where it's getting too big because we have all this access to special effects, because we have audiences that are able to accept larger ideas, these bigger concepts. We don't have the that's too much button anymore. We can always go bigger. We can always go larger. And I think that we do just need to implement a little bit of restraint back in, just to say, you know what? Before we get to the point where you're going to be doing the multiversal collapse story, multi-storm, just stop.
To be fair, I do think there is restraint, and that's something that, like, good directors, not all directors, but good directors have had to show in the last 15, 20 years as effects have been there to do whatever you want. But this particular subgenre of disaster movies is one of the culprits of, like, no, the people who want to make disaster movies don't want restraint. They want to just go absolutely nuts. And I guess that makes sense. I don't think you get like a serious director going, I want to make, you know, a serious, well-done disaster movie. Maybe it'll happen one day. Maybe Christopher Nolan's going to do a disaster movie and it'll be like the greatest disaster movie that ever existed.
I'll take it. I'll watch it 5 times just to make a point.
But I you know, well, that's not what we're getting though. We're getting movies starring Gerard Butler and directed by Dean Devlin and whatever else. We're getting San Andreas. We're getting I don't know what else.
It's not even. I don't want to make this a larger industry thing, but it is an industry thing. Like, everything has to be bigger. Everything has to be the biggest it's ever been. Unless you are starting at ground zero of like a small little indie character tale, anything that has an actual Hollywood budget attached to it needs to be the biggest thing that's ever existed. And I think that's just destroying every single genre it's touching.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I think other genres have fared a bit better because you get someone like, I don't know, Matt Reeves, where the Batman doesn't have to be like the most absurd, biggest Batman premise that we've had. It just, you know, there's like a sort of like restraint there where it's like, and not to say that it's small, there's still some big stuff that happens, but more just this idea that, no, he wants to do a crime-focused Batman. So I don't think, I think there's examples in most genres, even if they are littered with like, you know, the abundance that does creep into a lot of these Hollywood movies. I think disaster movies are kind of in a unique space where they're all like this. There's no good example of restraint, at least in Hollywood. I know there's some foreign disaster movies that have had some cred, like The Wave. There's a lot of Scandinavian disaster movies in the last few years. Maybe we'll do, you know, them in a season at some point. But those, while big-ish, do feel a bit more like, no, it's just one tidal wave, or it's just one, you know, like oil refinery blowing up and that's the disaster, so on and so on. So anyway, it's almost like the only way we'll get like a more grounded one out of Hollywood to an extent is if it's based on a real thing. But then that's like not as fun because it's based on a real thing and people actually died in it. So it's like, that's not,
That's the biopic at that point. That's not a disaster film. That's like saying Titanic is a disaster film. It's like, no, not quite.
It's listed as a disaster movie sometimes.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wouldn't agree. I think that
No,
that
there's no
is-
with that. I wouldn't put it in. But like when I see it on like the 50 best disaster movies, and I see Titanic, I'm like, I get what they're saying. Like technically,
Yeah.
it's a disaster. But
And I want to point out, just before we move out of this entire season, I know that there was some talk about doing Greenland because Greenland 2 is a movie that exists. From everything I've seen of Greenland, it's got the same problem. It's too big. It's too much of a thing. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't actually seen the movie, but I have seen trailers for Greenland 2 when we went to the theaters for other things. And it just seems like, nope, this is the big thing, the huge world-ending thing that has too big of stakes to possibly conceptualize.
well, we'll see in about a year's time for Greenland, Greenland 2, maybe. Who's to say? Who's to say? But I mean, yeah, like I think honestly, when I look back at all the disaster scenes we've done, and we did 2 that were specifically 70s, we did 1 that was 90s, we had Airport as a franchise, which was pretty much all 70s as well, and then we've done this one, which has bled into like we're right at the end of the 90s, into the 2000s, and even this one's like 2017. This is by far the newest one. This is easily my least favorite of these seasons.
Yeah.
And it's not even close, right? And it's not like it's not like the Airport franchise was high art, but I definitely had fun with more of those movies than anything here.
No, absolutely. I think that the highs of Airport are well above the like average of this season. This season has been, there's been some good moments here. I won't say there isn't, but it's been so sparse. And Airport only had 4 movies to work with, one of which was just garbage by all determinations. So this one we did 6, and it's just been like the whole way through.
I mean, hell, even the garbage Airport movie I think had more interesting things to talk about than some of these.
True. Yeah.
It's is what it is. But there you go. There you go. A lukewarm season of disaster movies. David, what are you rating Geostorm out of 10?
I'm looking back at Armageddon because I don't like Armageddon. I think Armageddon's very bad. And I'm wondering if this is worse. Because, like, I don't like Armageddon from just a gut level.
Whoa.
Like, is there something...
Remind me of the ratings we gave Armageddon.
So you gave it a 4. I gave it a 4.5.
Yeah, this is worse. I was just a little bit worried that I'd went lower and it might conflict with where I'm going with this one. But I know what I'm giving this one, and I'm satisfied with what I gave Armageddon in comparison.
Yeah, I think that there are less points in this movie where I was angry. I wasn't angry during this one. Armageddon, I had moments where I was actively pissed off with the way characters were acting. But I also think that Armageddon had higher highs. It had more periods where I was okay with it. So I think this one I'm going to come down just under my previous one and say just a flat 4. I could argue down to a 3.5, but I'm going to stay where I'm at.
Yeah, this was just more boring. And let's face it, Bruce Willis is better than Gerald Butler.
Yes, not a question.
So you've got that going on. And dare I say, Jim Sturgess is not as good as Ben Affleck either, for that matter.
Questionable, depending on the period in the movie, but yeah.
Depending, yeah. Liv Tyler versus Abbie Cornish. Now that's maybe a fight. That's maybe a fight.
I've seen more stuff I really like Liv Tyler in than Abbie Cornish, but she also just has a wider pedigree.
Yeah. But which one, if you actually had to say which one you think is the better actor out of the two of them, I actually don't know what I would say for that. Like, they're very...
Yeah, that one is tough.
Yeah. But regardless, the point I'm getting at is, whatever. So for me, this is a 3. It's a 3 out of 10. And I actually wasn't sure what I'd have rated it back when I first saw it. And when I went to log it into Letterboxd, I gave it a 3 out of 10, which is what I was thinking. I went, I agree with myself. Excellent. Right? I am consistent.
Consistency is key, as long as you can argue it to yourself.
Yeah, this is a very bad movie. This is a very bad movie, and that's right where the 3 out of 10 lives. So yeah,
I'm just gonna go ahead and fill in the little cut your losses. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, it's either cut from the collection or cut your losses. It's teetering between those two.
I gave you a higher score than you did, and I'm in cut your losses territory.
Sure, but okay, fair enough then. Cut your losses as I'm not going to argue that much.
I don't see any reason anyone needs to sit down and watch Geostorm.
No, unless you're a glutton for punishment or you've got a weird crush on Gerard Butler for some reason, then maybe why watch it for that? But that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jim Sturgess would probably pull more ladies, but who knows?
I don't know. Anyway, there's all kinds of freaks out there, and so yeah, that is Geostorm. That is the end as well of disaster season. Next week we begin a new season, and that new season is simply 2025. We will be doing 10 films over the course of 10 weeks. From 2025, some of the more prestigious films, stuff that has got some credibility behind it. Some of them have been nominated for Oscars. That just sort of happened recently. Not all of them have, but a lot of them have been. And we'll be working through those movies. And this might be something that becomes a tradition where early in the year we'll go back to the previous year, and just it's a good excuse to see a bunch of those movies and do some sort of relatively contemporary stuff. So we'll be kicking off with one of the biggest movies from a prestige perspective from last year, and that is One Battle After Another. So we're going to dive into that. I don't think I've ever reviewed a Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul W.S. Anderson, unfortunately, I have reviewed a number of his movies, much to my chagrin. But I don't believe I've ever reviewed a Paul Thomas Anderson movie on the channel. So that'll be interesting.
I didn't know that was it. Yeah.
I've also only seen a couple of his movies, to be honest, but bit of a weird blind spot, honestly, for the most part. But hey, heard good things about this one, so we'll check it out next week, and join us for that. Of course, you can also support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. It helps out a bunch if you do. It literally is what keeps the show going and helps make it a possibility. We are obviously independent, and we're not representing some website that is paying anything. So if I'm
a shill for Warner Brothers. I didn't know. Do I have to declare that?
You should, especially when you get your extra payday from Netflix. Cut me in there. You can go over to Patreon. You get the show a little bit early. You get access to the ratings rundown segments where we do some extra little categories ratings wise for each movie. The main thing you get though is a bonus show that we do once a month called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst things that have ever been made. Recently we've done things like Tiptoes, which was Gary Oldman in the role of a lifetime, and we also have done...
It's never not funny.
We've done an Uwe Boll film or two, we've done some Neil Breen movies, we've done a whole host of so bad they're good, and then some so bad they're just torture. So if that sounds like a fun time, go check it out. But thanks to everyone who already supports us, and of course you get bonuses for the other shows that we do as well. Such as the sci-fi movie podcast that me and David do together as well, called The Atomic Cinema Experiment. Go check out that. We in recent weeks have done The Shrouds and Slaughterhouse 5. We're working through Godzilla movies, one a month as well right now. So we just downed that recently, the old Japanese Godzilla movies. We've done all the modern ones already, but the backlog of Japanese ones we've just started working through.
Yep.
So that's the show. That's everything. That's Collector's Cut. Thank you very much for joining. We do appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.